Dear all, welcome to the session 5B, Digitalizing Infrastructure. So my name is Nina Nesterova from Breda University of Applied Sciences, and I will be the moderator of this session today. Before we start, a short reminder on the house rules. So Nicholas, we can go to the next slide, please. Yes, so as in other sessions, to ask questions, please go to chat and then session function. To view polls, and we will do a couple of them with you today, please go to poll session and then to the session. To view who is attending this session, go to people and then to session. To maximize the screen, you can hide the chat or double click on the presentation or speaker. And after this session, please try the networking function and visit the exhibition area. On the next slide, you can see who are our 4 speakers today. So this is Estibaliz Barañano from ASIMOB, Edoardo Felici from European Commission DG Move, Sergio Fernández from EMT Madrid, and Maarten van Berg from Rijkswaterstaat. And our first speaker today, as you can see, is Estibaliz Barañano. After 15 years in research and development for the ITS sector, she moved to ASIMOB, a startup that uses Internet of Things and artificial intelligence to automate road operations and management tasks. So I would say the floor is yours, and we are looking forward for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Nina. I will share my screen now. I don't know if I'm doing it right, actually. Can you see it?
For now, we can see you.
Dear me.
Yes, we can see the screen. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you again. Welcome to this presentation about automated road inspections for traffic signs and road surface. I am Esti from ASIMOB. Well, we see a big contrast between the technology and the sophisticated tools in traffic management centers for highways, for the main arteries of the cities, but then in the rest of the city, in the urban roads, in the streets and the peri-urban roads, there is very little technology. Traffic management is done by traffic signs, and they are managed by visual inspections. And true, there is no congestion issues in those roads, but there is surely a safety issue. About 90% of road fatalities happen in urban and secondary peri-urban roads. So safety is important in these roads. And drivers, when it comes to safety, drivers are requested to be in good condition when we sit behind the wheel. But roads should also be in good condition for us. And this is not always the case. And that's because maintenance is based on visual inspections. So is someone from the maintenance team just driving hundreds of kilometers a day, driving past thousands or even tens of thousands of traffic signs, and there is no evidence after its inspection. And of course, for road authorities, the budgets are limited, and maintaining a road network is quite expensive. So we think that new technology can help maintain and keep these roads in the best possible condition. Technologies like IoT, like artificial intelligence, can help detect incidences, detect the risks in an automated and very, very effective way. And we've been doing this with a very easy, simple deployment. Just by equipping vehicles of the maintenance fleet with lightweight, low-cost devices like a dashcam, an Android device, a connector at the OBD, we can gather data, gather video from the roads, and analyze it with our artificial intelligence models to extract the information that we need and provide it to the road operator. So with these, we've been doing, for example, managing or supervising traffic signs. Traffic signs are usually managed by doing inventories every several years, because inventories are a very labor-intense task. And what happens in between those inventories is not done usually in a very strict way. So all those changes are not being registered in an automated way. So we can do this with inspections, with the easy deployment that I showed before. And these are your use cases that we've been finding throughout this year. What you see here are details of the screen of the road traffic manager or road operator manager. So when we run an automated inspection, if we find a traffic sign that is new, that was not supposed to be there, we mark it with a green dot, like in the first case. This traffic sign was not, this no turning right, was not in the inventory, and it was detected in the automated inspection. So it's marked there in green, and with just a couple of clicks from the office, from the traffic management center, the manager can access the image from the footage from the street to see what is doing this traffic sign, where it's standing, if it's right or it should be removed, or what is going on with this traffic sign. The second case on the right is the opposite. In the inventory, there were 3 giveaway signs in this road, but they were not detected in the automated inspection, so they are marked in red. They're supposed to be there, but not detected. Just by clicking any of them from the office, the image down there from the place can be accessed to check why those traffic signs are not there, if they should be there, or it's the inventory that was not updated actually. But there are other cases as well, how to detect signs that are not really visible. In the first case, the no stopping, no parking sign was not detected in the automated inspection. A couple of clicks and the manager can access the image on the street, and actually the traffic sign is there, the inventory is right, but it's installed behind the traffic light, so it's not really, drivers cannot see it. In the second case on the right, the sign, the turn right sign, has not been detected. It is there, but it's so degraded that it's no longer visible, so some corrective action should be taken. But of course, there is the case of the other turn right sign on the right side of the picture. It is there, it is recognizable, but it's got a sticker on it. It's not really well. And for that, we have the panel. So we show a recent, the image of the last inspection of each and every traffic sign to check if it has things like stickers, the last one in the first road. Just by clicking on it, the road operator manager would access a screen like the one at the bottom right with the map where the traffic sign is and the video footage where that traffic sign appears. So they can check if the stickers need to be clean. In the second case, the first one seemed to be a little bit bent. They can access there, see how it is, if some action is needed. In the last row, the third one, the speed limit is being covered by bushes. Well, this needs urgent action very soon. So in a minute, the road operator manager can check hundreds of traffic signs and make sure that they are in the best condition and take actions when corrective actions are needed. Also, it's very useful for roadworks signals. So first, to verify that all traffic signs are correct and are in the right place. Like in this first case, the traffic signs were not installed in the right place. So in the second inspections, the road manager from the office could check that they have been removed from the place that were at the beginning and put before the roadworks, that is where they should be. In the second case, the roadworks warning was missing, was not detected, and should be put up again soon. In roadworks, there are more cases that are very easily identifiable with our automated system. Some inconsistencies. Of course, a human driver takes for granted. I mean, it's obvious which of the traffic signs should be taken in account and which ones not. But as we move to automated driving, maybe we should take care of this kind of inconsistencies in road signage when it comes to roadworks. So I think we've all seen these cases of traffic signs that are not really well maintained, that are not really correct, not really clear for all drivers. The other application, there was a thing that we are doing right now, is the detecting and evaluating the irregularities in the road surface. So we detect the potholes, the damaged expansion joints, so those big irregularities that affect driving comfort. We detect them very early, and we can draw on a comprehensive map of the road networks, pointing where these irregularities are and more or less the effect that they have on driving. So sometimes this irregularity might come from the traffic calming measures that might be a little bit too aggressive. In this case, they had a problem. These traffic calming measures were too aggressive for ambulances and for public buses. In the second case, is detecting these little cracks that, if left unchecked, could grow bigger in time and then create a problem. We can detect them, and we can track their evolution in time to see which ones are growing faster, so it's more urgent to repair. And with this as a conclusion, automated inspections are much more effective than the visual ones. Technology is there to help us to improve condition and detect risk early in all the urban streets or the secondary roads, not only in the highways, to avoid this kind of risks in the road infrastructure. The system can be integrated in a bigger management platform, a smart city platform, so that maintenance tasks can be optimized and budgets can be optimized as well. And new technology can help the digital transformation of all the road networks in the management and on operation phase of the decades of exploitation of the roads. And that's all from my side. There will be now questions. So we have time for questions on the poll.
Yes, thank you very much, Esti, for your presentation. It's always good to have really a concrete example on how technology can bring more efficiency into the daily work of mobility professionals. And yeah, just a small reminder to the audience, in case if you have the questions, you can ask them in the chat session. So please now, if you have questions for Esti or for any other speakers, feel free to use this function. And we also have a poll question prepared for you. So have a look at this section as well. And that is what's the most effective and affordable improvement of the road infrastructure to help reduce road fatalities? So there are several answers proposed. If you have a look at the poll, please answer them, and then we can discuss it in a bit. So looking at the questions in our chat box, which cities are you working with currently?
Well, we are from the north of Spain, so we've been, we're from Bilbao actually, so we've been doing things in Bilbao, in urban environment, in other provinces of the north of Spain in interurban roads, because I mean, when it comes to detecting these kind of things, we can do it in urban or interurban roads. There is no big difference in there, and also in other towns of the Basque Country.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And we have also another question. Can you talk more about the benefits of your solutions? Amount of savings generated, of time saved, or in other terms?
Actually, it's about the effectiveness of the monitoring. So you can, any road operator can make sure that all traffic signage is in the right place, is where it should be, and it's in good condition and visible. So it's, and then of course, taking the right decisions when it comes to a corrective action, which are the most urgent, because it gives a very comprehensive view of where roadwork, if you are going to do renewals in the road surface, there is information on where it is more urgent, where it is deteriorating faster. So it's about efficiency more than savings in that sense. It's efficiency. Mm-hmm. It's keeping the road in the best possible condition, given the budget that there is, of course.
Okay. And talking about more like a technical part of solution, how does the traffic sign monitoring adapt to different situations, such as road works areas, highways, or urban areas?
Mm-hmm. We work with geofences, and we can configure which places to gather information, which places to monitor, and which places not to monitor, and how often. Mm-hmm. So, for example, we're doing now a project in roadworks area, and we're taking data, we're monitoring it twice a day to make sure that road signage is okay, because roadworks is a dangerous place. So we're doing it twice a day. In other parts, maybe once every couple of weeks, once every week is enough for interurban roads, for example. So we can adapt the frequency of the monitoring to the specific needs of the areas, of each area.
Okay. Do you also make recommendations to cities on how to improve their inventory procedures?
Well, right now it's been, there is a digitization, the information normally is already digitized in databases, in geospatial systems, in digital twins, but then the process of keeping that updated is fully manual. So the process of how these are generated, mm-hmm. how these are updated is still the same as 50 years ago. So it's not paper anymore, it's not plans, it's a digital way of keeping information, but the process is manual. We should go to the digital transformation affecting processes in an automated way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very interesting. And now coming back to the poll question that we have asked the audience, it would be nice if you can reflect on their answers and what we have so far. So repeating the question, what's the most effective and affordable improvement of the road infrastructure to help reduce road fatalities? What I can see from result is that almost 60% of our audience think that it's solution C, so conditions in the road surface, irregularities, water, ice in key stretches. So would you agree with this? Do you have another opinion, or based on your experience, can you reflect on this?
No, we are actually, we are doing the ice and water will be ready soon. We want to perform as the inspections as useful as possible for road operators. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to know from experienced people which is the most important parameters to be monitored. So that's very useful for us to be able next year to offer more services. So we're already working on that. That's good.
Oh, that's good. Yes.
But
yes. Sorry.
I see questions about the types of vehicles.
Yes.
We don't care. Any type of vehicle will do, as long as they will be driving in the road network that we're monitoring. So we take fleet because we don't want personal data or private vehicles. Mm-hmm. So we prefer fleet installations. But it can be a van, it can be any type of car, we don't care about that. It's dashcam, we install a little dashcam, and the operator just needs to make sure that everything is on when they start their rounds, and that's all they have to do. They have to do nothing during the round.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
yes, thank you for your presentation and the answers. And we see you back at the panel discussion. And now I would like, I see there are more questions coming. Maybe you can also answer them within the chat function. And we need to move on with our agenda. So I would like to give the floor to our second speaker. And this is Edoardo Felici from DG Move, European Commission. He's working on the Intelligent Transport Systems Directive and related delegated regulations. So, Edoardo, can you please share your screen? Yes, perfect.
Yes, good. Nina, can you hear me as well? Okay, thank you. Good morning to everyone from cloudy Brussels. I hope you're all doing well and you're safe. I wanted to catch on Esti's presentation and continue that, because what she is doing with her work is exactly what we're trying as well to foster through legislation. So I'd like to tell you today what we are attempting at the European Commission to initiate to make sure that these kind of services can flourish. So I'll tell you today a bit about the European Strategy for Data and what we're doing to increase the availability of data and exchange of traffic and travel-related data. We do that through the ITS directive, which I'll explain a bit to you what it is about. Then looking at the specific delegated regulation on real-time traffic information, and then I'll show you some considerations on urban data types. So you must all already have heard of the European Strategy for Data. Presented in February, the Commission aims to foster and accelerate the availability of high-quality data for all kinds of services and companies to create and innovate. So the idea is that this data should be able to flow within the EU across sectors based on fair rules for access, practical governance, and in full respect of our European values and rules. One of the aspects of this European Strategy for Data is the creation of so-called data spaces. And for mobility, we have a specific data space where all mobility data should be able to be exchanged according to these principles that I showed you in the previous slide. The idea of this European mobility data space is to position Europe at the forefront of development of ITS, of intelligent transport systems, to be able to make it future-proof, so include connected cars in the system, other modes of transport, and make sure that data can be pooled and shared. Within my unit in DG Move, which is the unit for sustainable and intelligent transport, we have two specific actions planned. One is the review of the ITS directive, which I'll tell you a bit more in a bit. And we want to make sure that the national access points, which are points where data is shared by member states, can actually be strengthened and can cooperate together more. So this ITS directive, which I've mentioned a few times now, what does it contain? There are 6 priority actions which have been translated into delegated regulations, which set for different kinds of services and different aspects, all kinds of provisions and requirements. So we look at multimodal travel information, at real-time traffic information, which I'll tell you about today, about safety-related information, about eCall, and safe and secure information for for parking for trucks and commercial vehicles. So these kinds of this kind of legislation aims to make sure that the data which is already available is made accessible via these national access points. These delegated regulations set out what kind of categories and types of data need to be made accessible, where the legislation applies to, which kind of standards and formats need to be used. They mention these national access points, which member states have to set up to make sure data can be accessible, and if applicable, there are timelines for deployment. And these delegated regulations have been around for the past few years, and we see many member states already taking up the work. Now, to continue a bit the work on the Intelligent Transport Systems Directive, which is now 10 years old, we will start a revision process, and I'd like to invite all of you who are interested to join in discussing with us how to revise it to our first public workshop on the 15th of December. And we are hosting a public consultation until the 2nd of February. So if you want to be involved and you want to discuss with us how to revise this directive, please do get in touch, use the links in the presentation. Now, zooming a bit into the actual delegated regulation 2015-962 in very technical speak, this deals with the provision of real-time traffic information services. And what this legislation does It says that if there are any of these kinds of data types which you see on screen, so static road data types, dynamic road status data types, or traffic data types, that if these are digitized and available somewhere, these data types have to be made accessible via these national access points. So each member state has set up a national access point. Some are still working on the details to finalize this, but most member states have these national access points where these kind of data categories can be found. And you see, for this specific delegated regulation, this focuses on the actual conditions of the infrastructure, what's happening on infrastructure, and all these kinds of traffic data, which have the more sort of traffic engineering related statistical purposes. Now, why are we revising these specifications? This delegated regulation, first of all, applies only to the TEN-T corridors, so only on the main networks and motorways of Europe. And there's an option to add priority zones, but member states have not used that option very much. So we're looking, first of all, to see if we need to extend the geographical scope of this regulation. So not only have it apply to the main corridors and motorways, but also to provincial roads, secondary roads, and of course, urban roads as well. Second thing we're looking at is adding possible new data types to make it future-proof. So things like urban vehicle access regulations, recharging, refueling points, in-vehicle generated data could be added to the data scope, to the list which I showed you in the previous slide of the delegated regulation. And a third point we're going to look at is maybe mandating the actual creation of data. So the delegated regulation now only says that you have to make data accessible if it already exists. And we're looking into possibly mandating the actual creation of data. So if there is no data available, that it should be made and then shared. So specifically, why are we looking into these data types? You see here a table where with the data categories we're looking at. So I mentioned UVAR already, recharging and refueling points, historical traffic data is being looked at, maybe adding some other road or traffic specific rules, and then the in-vehicle generated data in a specific business to government context. And I think this last point is exactly what Esti is also working on, to make sure that data from vehicles, be it cameras, be it sensors in the vehicles itself, can be used for all kinds of essential services. And you see these essential services listed are the ones we're focusing on now. So obviously the idea is to make sure that if we add these data types, they contribute to making these essential services a reality. So think about also services like automation, automated driving, mobility as a service, all these kinds of door-to-door services should be enabled by these new data categories and these new provisions in the delegated regulation. So I mentioned these three policy options, looking at adding new data types, extending the geographical scope beyond TEN-T networks and other motorways. And this third policy option is to mandate data types, so obliging actually data to be created for specific categories. And I want to stress that we're not going to go with a blanket provision where everything is extended or everything is mandated, but we're really trying to pinpoint what is proportional, what is fit for purpose, what data can be actually used. So we'll have a sort of a mix and a map of different requirements per data type. So zooming into the urban data types, as this is a POLIS conference, so I would like to focus on the cities. Some of the considerations we have currently when working on this revision are on the screen. So the first question we always ask ourselves is, what do we actually really need to feed these future services? Are the data types that we're focusing on the important ones that we need? Should we then also expand the geographical coverage? It obviously doesn't make sense to ask for urban vehicle access regulations if the coverage of the regulation is only the TEN-T corridors and the motorways. Obviously, we won't find many UVARs there. But at the same time, UVARs, as the numbers are growing in the EU, but information is lacking, can we expect that cities and provinces start digitizing this data? Would it be okay to mandate that, or would the burden be too high on these cities? In the realm of recharging and refueling points, we see that much data is already available, especially in the recharging area. But is it okay to share this data? Do we consider some data commercially sensitive or not? Can we share it publicly? All these kinds of questions arise when discussing that. And the last one, on the vehicle generated data, The questions that we ask ourselves is which use cases are actually relevant for public authorities? Can certain sensor data actually be translated to useful traffic management or asset management use cases? And then which data requirements are actually relevant? Should we ask for standardization of this kind of data or not? So to actually guide along this whole process, we have a supporting study which started in January and we are concluding in this month, where we had 2 public surveys. We interviewed a number of stakeholders and had a look at a few case studies to make sure that these questions are sort of scoped in the right way, and supported then also by a multi-criteria and a cost-benefit analysis to help us understand if indeed these burdens and the costs make sense. So we will be discussing this revision with the member states experts, and we expect then the text of this delegated regulation to be modified in Q1 2021, where then the actually revised delegated regulation is expected in Q3 of 2021. So the work is really ongoing. We're in the middle of this revision process. The supporting study has given us quite a lot of evidence base, but it will be now up to member states to discuss and choose then exactly what kind of mix we will be going for. So since we are in this POLIS conference, I wanted to check with you in a poll if this is something we could go for. So the idea of having local and regional authorities be obliged to digitalize essential data. So should we mandate that certain data is actually created in order to support these future real-time traffic information services that we are foreseeing now in the coming years? And you have 3 very simple options. Yes, we should actually oblige these local authorities to create data, to get to work and make sure this is created. No, the burden is too high and the benefits wouldn't be enough, or it depends, and then we can obviously discuss. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Edoardo, for explaining us the next steps in gradually moving to the common European mobility data space. And I already see some questions in the chat function, so let's look at them first and then reflect on the answers from the poll. So the questions that we get so far, will information on transfer points, MobiPunt, be part of these urban data types, or does it fit within MMTIS?
Yes, so for the people who are not an expert, the MMTS is the Multimodal Travel Information Services Delegated Regulation, also called Priority Action A, which is sort of the sister regulation to the one I discussed today. These transfer points are very much in scope of the Multimodal Travel Information Services Directive or regulation, because they actually really offer this multimodal perspective. Within this delegated regulation that I discussed today, it's more dealing with the actual infrastructure itself and the state of the infrastructure, so what's happening on the infrastructure, while MMTS really deals with the use of the infrastructure by travelers. So that's a slightly different perspective. Okay.
And we have also another question: will information on dynamic road pricing also be included?
So I believe actually road pricing should already be in there. In the dynamic road status column, but I need to double check, to be honest.
Okay. And a couple of more questions before we go to the poll. So also any data question nowadays directly links to the consumer data privacy question. So is it foreseen to address this topic in the revised regulation, and how?
So privacy is of course very important, and anything has to be GDPR proof. What we see with the data categories that we deal with in this delegated regulation is that they are, of course, very traffic related and traffic event related. So if this is aggregated, anonymized, and shared in a way which only represents a single traffic event, like a traffic jam, an accident, roadworks, or infrastructure details of a road, then it's not privacy related. Where we do touch upon this is, of course, the subject of in-vehicle generated data, where the data source can be related back to a single individual. And this is something to be very, very aware of. So what we try to do is make sure that from this business to government perspective we have for in-vehicle generated data, which means we want to be able to have services for public authorities dealing with asset management or traffic management, that these do not create any GDPR issues because they will be de facto aggregated, anonymized at the source already. So the actual, only the insights which the public authorities need are shared, and not the actual personal data behind it.
Okay. Yeah, it's clear. Thank you. And the last question before we go to the poll, do you feel that public authorities are penalized by the delegated regulations due to their open data policy, that they can't charge for data?
That's actually an interesting point, because strictly speaking, this delegated regulation does not say the data should be available for free. So, of course, in the realm of safety, that's another delegated regulation. We say, look, this data is important because it's safety related. We do not want people to have to pay for that kind of information, so that should be available for free. That's not the same for this delegated regulation. So we say the data should be accessible via an app, but then the conditions to access that data can still be different from open data policy. So this ITS directive is not the same as the open data policy, and that's a difference in that. And that's why also service providers or other sources of information should not be afraid to let themselves be known on a national access point, because that could only increase their chances of finding business opportunities and doesn't necessarily harm them.
Okay. Well, it's quite important clarification. And now looking to your poll question, so we see that, yes, like, should local regional authorities be obliged to digitalize essential data to support current and future real-time traffic information services? 60% of our audience say yes. And 35, yeah, is saying it depends. However, so I think that can be really a subject of the further discussion, and maybe we can still touch upon this in a panel discussion. So you can, for the audience request, you can always also come up with your suggestions back in the panel discussion. Thank you very much, Edoardo. And I would like to go further for our next speaker, and to give the floor to Sergio Fernández, who, as from 2008, is working at EMT Madrid, which is the biggest public mobility operator in Spain. And Sergio is currently leading the International Collaboration Project Department of EMT. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nina. And thank you to POLIS for this opportunity. So, well, I will tell you about the LEAD project, which is something quite new for us. The truth is that all the last mile delivery systems are facing many challenges associated with the rise of on-demand commerce and logistics. And it's very difficult sometimes to accommodate the clients' and citizens' expectations, all of us as potential clients, when we demand, for instance, deliveries almost at a zero cost, with very strict delivery times and very little market incentives to be able to provide sustainable solutions. There is also the concept of Uberization of logistics, which put a strain on cities facing negative consequences, alongside with the unpredictability of market developments. So cities are aware of these challenges, and that's why there is an increasing number of living labs popping up in many places around the globe. Digital twins are something quite fairly new, at least in the sphere of urban logistics. For those of you as me that didn't know anything about this before, a digital twin is a digital reproduction of a complex real world, representing the different processes, actors, and their interactions. And this is very potentially interesting because it allows to assess and to predict how the behavior of a real complex ecosystem will behave when modifying different parameters or setting different characteristics or hypotheses. And on top of that, the current COVID-19 crisis has demonstrated the importance of the resilience of the logistic chains, which sees the most complex stretch in the last urban mile. And it is also, all these factors are also changing the way we all buy, increasingly turning to online, on-demand platforms. And this pressure on the system must therefore be efficiently mitigated, and that's what LEAD intends to help with. And what is LEAD? Well, LEAD will create digital twins in 6 cities, which belongs to the TNT urban network, and they are TNT urban nodes. Those 6 you can see on the bottom: Madrid, The Hague, Lyon, Porto, Budapest, and Oslo. And the different solutions will be applied within different use case scenarios. So on the right-hand side, you can see the scheme on how this will work, the different steps. The first one is to understand the current situation and to set the contextual framework. Then through these value case scenarios and the simulation of the environment, we will develop these digital twin models. Will be fed by the experiments, some use cases or pilots or demos in real life in all these 6 living labs. And thanks to this, we hope that we will get validated strategies and new knowledge to let us know more about the logistic in our cities and to help cities, especially in better planning. So getting into the details of the different living labs, I would like to give you some details. Madrid, it's an important logistic hub, of course, as many big other cities in Europe. It belongs to 2 TNT corridors. We face occasional air quality and congestion challenges. We have regulations that sets restrictions for different types of vehicles depending on different situations. And we are also facing this rise of e-commerce and are also facing the challenges of the COVID and the post-COVID mobility that is coming up. Our ambition is to demonstrate that it can be better and developed and more efficiently developed the urban logistic last mile chain by using a urban consolidation center. We will apply a route optimization engine, and we will explore alternative and sustainable business models in cooperation with private companies. So developing these public-private cooperation mechanisms. And we will also try to demonstrate the efficiency and reliability for these parcel companies and therefore for their clients, by using digital twins compared to the traditional approaches, and explore these economic incentives, potential ones, or operational ones, such as extending the delivery time windows, and of course, learn more on data management. In the case of The Hague, they are focusing on what they call the Central Innovation District. It's an area where there is a dense variety of users, including housing, industry, and services. And they will develop a mobility hub, multi-user and multi-function, to explore the potential of integrating crowdsourcing or crowd shipping in the last mile urban deliveries, and therefore explore the business models, the challenges, to work on these new algorithms and try to interconnect all these type of services. In the case of Porto, it's quite different. We have a partner company, Sonai, which is they manage a huge number of retail stores all across the country, and they will try to explore the possibility of using these stores as business to business and business to client electric charging docks. That means that they will mix in the same approach the logistics and transportation, the distribution, the retail, and the use of clean vehicles. Of course, they will try to optimize their routes, to develop new business models, such as dynamic pricing or cost optimization, or these emissions and supply planning, and try to get the best of it to capture this additional e-commerce growth with new services to consumers. In the case of Lyon, they will explore the last mile distribution models based on the creation of a urban logistic platform in an underground parking. They will mainly focus on soft modes, that means walking or cycling, but also using autonomous vehicles. Excuse me. And they will basically would like to have a decision support framework to better evaluate the implementation of these solutions to reduce the motorized traffic, to leverage public policies, and to promote partnership governance. The case of Budapest is similar, or to the Madrid one. They want to really explore the advantages of a urban consolidation center, to explore the digital twin potential for the macroscopic transport model, and to assess the impact on air quality, and basically to explore also means to emphasize and to promote electric mobility or zero emission mobility. And last but not least, Oslo, they will concentrate on the business to customer segment and these home deliveries by using also public transport infrastructure. That means they will set 2 locations in the railway station and metro station. And they will also explore the feasibility of using crowd shipping services. So explore the business models, these alternative delivery service concepts in association with the Nimber community, and also all this economic, financial, and environmental potential. The 4 strategies are based in innovative business models, as we mentioned during the explanation of the pilots: agile freight storage and distribution, including these crowdsources shipping, low emission delivery vehicles, either electric or hybrid or automated, and this data-driven approach to let us know more and to get a better planning. This is a very brief scheme of the architecture. So the DAS is the dynamic data-driven application system. We have both the physical world and the digital twin. Luckily, as we have technical partners which are dealing with this, because I must admit this sounds a little bit science fiction to me yet. And the idea is that we will have to feed, we have to ingest data to this digital twin model, and based on different hypotheses, with the data coming from the different logistic operators, we will be capable to model how the real world will evolve based on different circumstances, such as, for instance, more restrictions or limitations in delivery times. So by using digital twins in last mile logistics, we hope to help cities embracing technology and this data value to speed up transitions toward the physical internet paradigm and the co-creation of solutions for on-demand economy. And the expected impacts is to better understand all these cost-effective strategies and measures to achieve the essentially zero-emission city logistics in these major urban centers by 2030. Also new practices and solutions for a better cooperation between the private and the public sector. And the last one would be to really help city administrations or regional administrations to the implementation or for the implementation of sustainable urban mobility plans or sustainable urban logistic plans and other planning tools to learn more about the use of big data and real traffic management. We are 25 partners in 11 different countries and in 3 continents. We have some interested partners from the US and from China. EMT Madrid is the coordinator. You may think or wonder why EMT as a public transport operator. Well, that's why we manage 23 underground parking facilities across the city, which potentially can be used for the logistics sector. And we are also developing a mobility model for the city of Madrid. And just to finalize, to say that it's fully aligned with the European Green Deal and the Strategic Transport Research and Innovation Agenda roadmap. Those are the points which are touched upon by LEAD. And to end the presentation, I would like to call the attention of other local stakeholders, local authorities which might be attending this presentation to join our transferability platform. We are looking for 6 other cities or regions to join us to benefit from training, technical visits, interactive workshops. So if you are interested, please let us know. The deadline is next December 11th. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Sergio, for your presentation. And yeah, it's clear that like digital twins are new, but also they become quite a hot topic these days. And it seems that they have a lot of potential in helping local decision makers. So we also have a poll question for your presentation. So I would really like audience to think about how do you think, what are the primary needs of public authorities in terms of building digital twins? So you have some answers which are being offered in a poll section. And in the meantime, I'll check the, yes, I'll check, please feel free to ask questions for Sergio, and I have one. So you are in the process of the digital twin creation right now. So what are the key challenges that you are experiencing?
Well, the main challenge is the lack of knowledge and the lack of skills. This is, at least for me, something very new. And generally, local administrations, we always suffer the lack of these specialized skills and personnel and resources. So we are still in the process of learning more how to develop the digital twin. That could be a combination of skills, infrastructure, data, how to take benefit of all the data that on a daily basis the city generates, and also how to connect with the different logistic operators, at least in Spain mostly, and in Madrid in particular. The logistic sector remains or depends a lot on self-employed drivers, and sometimes it's very difficult to reach them. So we are trying to get the best of it through what we call the community of practice. Mm-hmm. We have called all the different sector associations, user associations, even neighborhood associations to work together on how to feed that digital twin and how to merge and to put together all the concerns and challenges and try to look for solutions. So it's really, it's not an easy task. But well, we are quite optimistic.
Yeah.
So.
And indeed, looking at the poll answers, I think, yeah, 70% of the audience is backing up what you're saying that specialists and skills is what is now currently really, kind of one of the biggest primary need to facilitate the further development of the digital twins. Okay, and I also see, indeed, so one time for everybody, please join the lead transferability platform and benefit from the tailored approach. So, and if you have more questions to Sergio, please feel free to ask them in the chat function. And we will go to our next speaker now, and the final speaker. And this is Maarten van den Berg from Rijkswaterstaat in the Netherlands, who is a traffic management expert with 20 years experience in the public and private sectors. And he specialized on the traffic management processes and design, deployment and maintenance of the intelligent traffic system. So please, Jan, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Nina, for this introduction. Yeah, so my name is Maarten van den Berg. I work at Rijkswaterstaat as a technical manager, and I'm part of the Socrates project. And I'm gonna just highlight one of the use cases we are doing within Socrates. So if you have any questions during my presentation, please put them in the chat, and we will address them just shortly after this presentation. So let me first introduce the project very quickly. So Socrates is a European Commission funded project in 4 different countries, and with all different kinds of partners in different sectors. And the main focus of the project is to research and deploy and test different kinds of public-private cooperation models, and also we are really looking into the business aspect of those cooperation models. However, if you want to test cooperation, you need to have some matter to test it on. So Socrates is focusing on the traffic management 2.0 stuff, and we're really looking into those traffic management projects and to test the cooperation around it. So basically, we are looking at 4 different types of use cases. The first one is about network optimization. The second one is about smart destination, which is about traffic management around the event areas. We're also looking at roadworks and how to improve that. And the final one is environmental zones, and that's this presentation is about. Okay, so on this use case, it's a pretty small one within the Socrates context. We're working on it with 4 partners. We have TomTom and B-Mobile as the service providers who are actually using the data from the city of Amsterdam, and they are provided to their customers. And here you can see a screenshot of us working on the DATEX2 format that we have created for the distribution of the environmental zone information. So we really talk about an environmental zone, and in this case, it's Amsterdam. And the zone we have chosen for this use case is the freight traffic zone, or for trucks, diesel trucks in particular. So that's the zone we started with, and of course you might know that the zone changed last November. So at the moment we changed the use case as well. So our target group is much bigger because all diesels are regulated at the moment. So a small but important detail for this environmental zone is the so-called dynamic route. And this is the Kennedy Laan. And this route could be exempt from the zone. So the road operator could change this route. It could actually take it out of the zone, out of the legal zone, if they think it's needed. And it's done when there is a lot of freight traffic towards the event area at the RAI venue center. Okay, let's look at the challenges. So the partners came together and we were discussing what's the win-win-win for each of the partner. So basically it's the win for the road authority, a win for private service providers, and also a win for the road user, of course. And one of the main points is that it's very difficult for people to know when you actually enter an environmental zone. They're pretty new, and there are also different shapes of the signs. So it's also a new element in the urban areas. And also, if you want to navigate through it, you never know how the zone is precisely scaped. So yeah, a navigation system could help you with that. And also, well, in this case, we only talk about Amsterdam. But if you are a truck driver and you have clients all over Europe and you're visiting different cities, then it's impossible for you to know all the different requirements. And also, of course, you don't want violations and unnecessary fines, which is also good for the city, because as a city you don't want the polluting diesels in your city. So what we'd like to achieve is basically, well, less violations to improve the air quality for the community. And the third one is also very important. This is basically the main point for Socrates, that it should lead to new business opportunities for the private partners, because in that way you can create a sustainable business model out of it. Well, better services, and the last one is about the possibility of scaling it up to a European level. So that's what we want to achieve. So this is a bit of a functional technical diagram. On the top you can see the different partners working together, and the different blocks are the different processes they need to do in order to build up this chain. And the light gray is the chain you need for the static data, and the the darker gray, the plateau 2 area, is marked for the more dynamic part of the zone. Well, at the moment we have 2 working applications, one from TomTom and one from B-Mobile, and they're, yeah, you can basically download them, and yeah, especially if you're a truck driver. But since the 1st of November, you can also use it if you are a regular user. Okay, so my final 2 slides. This one is about the results and the recommendations. The good news is that all partners within Socrates want to continue with this service also after Socrates. So it's not just a project. Well, this is a project result, but partners really want to keep working on it, and we're not paying them to do that. So I think that's good news. A very important lesson is that further standardization of the profile and also the terminology, the content, and also the use is very important. If you are a bit more aware of the profile we're using in DATEX in this context, it's not a very complicated message we're using. It's for just, let's say, static data, but still it's very important to work on the standardization, and not only of the profile, but also on the terminology and the content. So, by example, some service providers prefer to work with 2D maps, but others use 3D maps. So it's important to know that. Otherwise, it's not readable, or you need a lot of rework after you have received the message. The third point is about that the current data from the road authority is not really suitable. Sometimes it's presented on the website, as in our case in Amsterdam, it was presented on the website, but it was not really usable. So we really needed to work on that. We needed to digitalize it and make sure it was really readable for all service providers. And in this case, well, we can talk about a national access point. That's something you need, but what you really need in this context is a partner who is working on making sure that the data is readable and standardized for all partners. So it really asks also for static. I'm just talking about static data, so it's also for static data. It's important to look into the details and make sure that your data is provided in a good manner. Last point is about the pains and gains of the truck drivers. The partners who were involved in this project were not really familiar with truck drivers. They are familiar with, well, so let's say regular road users. We actually did some surveys and we asked people what they want. But for this specific use case, we had the truck drivers. And if you want to develop in this direction, working with truck drivers, then you need a slightly different approach. By example, you really need to involve the planners as well, because the truck drivers themselves don't have a lot of influence on their route. And this is my last slide about the consolidation and the publication. That's the first point on our agenda, and we will publish it, well, starting actually today. And we keep doing some presentations, but also some internal consolidations until first quarter of 2021. And the final results will be published around summer next year. Well, I'm pretty happy with the UFAR toolbox and initiative. I think it's important for the further European standardization of the message. And I think it's also important that the UFAR initiative will focus on the larger, on the large scale support. What I mean is that you need a lot of service providers who are actually willing to support this standard, because there are so many standards and you have to choose one of them and make sure it's a good one. and then make sure you get enough support for that. The final one is a bit more on the Dutch level, on our national level. We have the Talking Logistic initiative in the Netherlands, where they gather all the data from different cities. They're digitalizing it, and also they're making sure that it's distributed via the NDW, the National Access Point. Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Yes, thank you, Jan Maarten, for sharing a very interesting experience on the UVAR digitalization. And there are a couple of questions to you. So, first of all, does the freight traffic get the proper information of the dynamic routing in time, that they don't get surprised?
That's a good question. Actually, this is one of the points we couldn't test in real life. The dynamic part, as I said, it was pretty difficult to do. So we had some challenges. And it is indeed a good question, because it's at the moment, as the system, how the system works, or actually how the process works behind the dynamic message, is that in this case, the Team C of Amsterdam doesn't know upfront when they are opening, when they are opening that extra route. They don't know. Because if they open it, it needs to be used immediately. So it's at the moment, it's not known, but it's something maybe we can arrange. And I think this also applies for other dynamic messages. A lot of service providers or road users actually would like to know it a little bit more in advance.
Okay.
The dynamic part. The static part is known up front, of course.
Well, that's going to be indeed an interesting next step. And there's another question for you. Can you say something about the effort required, for example, on the part of the city of Amsterdam especially? Because, of course, not each city will benefit resources and technical support from European projects to digitalize their UVAR scheme. Yes, yeah, that's a good question. You actually need to work on this. It's not logic, as I said. The information of the environmental zone of Amsterdam was already published on the website, and they did it in a pretty detailed way. They used the polygons. So basically, they made a digital map of the zone itself, but that was not enough. Because you get different interpretations, and also the polygons were a little bit rough. So it was difficult to tell from that digital map to know if the environmental zone was part of the highway or of the urban way that was going along it or underneath it. So you really need to put some effort, and I would say do it on a national level. That's why we're working together with NDW in this case, and we really had to hire someone who was helping us to make sure that the data was correct. And it is some effort. Yeah, so something to take into consideration. And Suzanne, you mentioned in your chat, just to pay attention for the whole audience, that a new project of our box is building a methodology and technical framework for putting UR schemes into a machine-readable and standardized format. So if you're interested, just consult the link. And maybe the final question before we go to the panel discussion with everybody. So in your recommendations, you mentioned really necessity in further standardization of profile, terminology, content, and use. And Edoardo, in his presentation, he already discussed upcoming revised delegated regulation. So how do you think, at which extent this revision will facilitate above mentioned problems that you have highlighted in your speech? That's a good question. Yeah, I think you just need to organize it on a national level to make sure you have some resources. If this is static data, so it shouldn't be that hard, and it's not really complex. It's rather that you need to put some effort in it, and you need to do it on
yeah, on a level that you can learn from each other. So that's why I'm saying on national level. So on national level, we could organize sessions, and actually that's what we're doing to support cities in their data delivery.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. I would like now to invite all the speakers to join a panel, and I would also like to invite the audience to ask the questions for the panel in case you have some. And yeah, we had touched today upon the question of the ITS regulations coming, and look at 3 very different products and services that are being developed relating to it. And my first question would be specifically for ST, Sergio, and Jan. So again, like looking from the perspective of the product services that you are involved in, which are the most important areas of the revised delegated regulation that can further facilitate the development and upscale of your product services? So, or other way around, what are the critical topics that attention should be paid in this regulation, which can really help you in the further bringing up your products and services up to scale?
Maybe I will start then.
Yeah.
Yes, for what we're doing, there are mentions to static road data, which is the permanent traffic signage, for example, or the dynamic road data, which is the roadwork signage, for example, which are directly affected here. And the directive, this document directly addresses these issues in Articles 8 and 9. And it says that this information should be updated in a timely manner for doing precise digital mapping and so on. But updates timely, but it doesn't give any time limit. So yes, it mentions it, but it doesn't establish any specific time frame for updates. So yeah, it depends.
Yeah.
Well, indeed, from the perspective of a city, I mean, there are a lot of uncertainties on this. At the cities, we've been working on different standards, for instance, DATEX, and our main concern at the moment is that we depend on many different levels of administration. So the national access points depend on the national government. As far as we know, we are cooperating with them in trying to get agreements on how these national access points should be. But it's something that doesn't depend on us. So our main concern is what will imply to be able to cope with the requirements to provide data to this national access point. If we will have to turn all the standardization of our data, we will have to adopt any other format. How strict will that be, considering static, dynamic, traffic data, etc. So it's something that it is still quite uncertain for us, and it's also linked with what we've been mentioning about the lack of skills, the lack of resources. We have to integrate information from different departments, and not necessarily they depend on the same one, and that is really something that generally lights all the alarms when thinking about all what you need to do to be compliant.
Yes, thank you. Jan Maarten, would you like to react? I think actually, yeah, you covered it a bit in the previous question, but would you like to add something on?
Yeah, well, actually, I agree to the last 2 comments on that. So yeah, I would add that it's good to start simple. Well, I see a lot of lists of data top 8, data top 20s. Maybe just do a data top 1 and focus on that and make sure that's done correctly, and that it's standardized, and that we can use it in multiple cities across Europe.
Okay.
And start just with simple ones, because simple ones are already pretty tough. Not for technical reasons, mostly for other reasons.
Edoardo, would you like to react on this?
Yes, thanks, Nina. Excellent question and excellent answers as well from all my colleagues. So, indeed, it's a tricky subject. To react on what Esti said, so on the specifications, especially when you deal with data quality, it's very difficult to find the balance between over-specifying and maybe fixing all kinds of requirements on the latency, on the standards, on all kinds of things. Because then they risk to become really outdated, and you risk to stifle innovation because you're blocking new initiatives, new companies, new services from emerging because they have to adhere to these regulations, which can quickly become old. So we're definitely looking at how to mention the data quality aspect in the delegated regulation without being overburdening or over-specific. Of course, timely manner in this case would mean that the data needs to be relevant at the moment of use. So if it's months later and many accidents have already happened because of bad signage, then it's not timely anymore. But of course, that's still open to interpretation. I appreciate that. Regarding what Sergio said, I think we all recognize that the world we come from was very much divided into silos. So each mode has a different silo, each road authority has different ways of approaching things, but all from a very siloed perspective. With this new, this future which has come upon us, we see that we need all these kind of horizontal coordination and horizontal collaboration to make sure that people know what has to happen with data, where it should be shared, in what kind of formats and standards, etc. What I see a lot is that many people find it often easier to reinvent the wheel in terms of standards than to see what's already available, adhere to that, and put in the effort to make sure that their own initiative gets incorporated in new standardization processes. I know, of course, in dealing with DATEX, that DATEX is a standard that is used more and more, and that's in constant need of adaptation because of new options coming, new initiatives coming. So, for instance, UVAR is one of those where we say, look, let's expand DATEX to make sure that UVAR is accommodated within the standard. And I would always welcome and push you all to make sure that you tackle these kinds of subjects in a horizontal manner, in a European perspective, and really try to reach out. Of course, if there's a role we can play in connecting you with colleagues from other member states who have similar issues, then we'd be really happy to do that. So please do reach out to us. And the final thing with your Maarten, if you say indeed start with one data type, then I'd be very curious to know which one data type you would suggest to start with, because of course that's then the main question that comes to mind.
You have an idea, Jan Maarten? Which one would you like to start?
Well, let's start with environmental zones.
Okay.
Great, but then what would you define as an environmental zone? Let's start with the definition of that then.
Well, I think that's also an important aspect, and if you look at the signage for environmental zones, it's as I said, it's a pretty new phenomenon, and also the signage at the start was all over the place, and I think we're already working towards standardization of the signage as well. And yeah, but so what's an environmental zone? That's something we need to work on as well. So we need to define it. But in the end, because as you said, if you just choose one, it's already complicated. So then, well, I'm not an expert on the static data. I'm more into the operations and dynamics. But I think environmental zone is a very good start, actually. You have different types, different regimes, different target groups for diesels, for regular cars, for freight traffic, for taxis, etc. And all that actually you can actually define all those different target groups and requirements in the DATEX message. It's possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Well, and there are kind of other challenges which might not be directly linked, but are quite relevant for cities as well, as the new mobility services, for instance, all these shared mobility services and the data standards that are being used, the concerns about using MDS, about privacy, and then the new standards which are raising up in Europe. I'm aware of the Netherlands initiative on the city data standards for mobility, which aim potentially could be even become a European-wide standard. Topic really are really our main, let's say, fear is that cities, we generally don't react so promptly, and we need time, and everything goes so fast that it's very easy for us to lag behind and not being able to reach the target.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we have actually quite an interesting question from audience, also bringing together different presentations we talked, and what we now also partly told Sergio. So in view of the shortage of skills and resources in local government and the growth in data obligations on public authorities, should we bring to the table the sensitive subject of public sector data monetization? So, yeah.
Yeah, but well, at least for public authorities, we are kind of obliged. I mean, we need to share the data, and we generally have open data portals where we provide the data, because data is actually not generated by us, but for citizens, by citizens. So yeah, it's a good debate how we could get some, yeah.
Yeah, Edoardo?
Yes, this is a really good question indeed. I would like to counter that with an idea. So maybe monetization isn't the best way to do this, because you run the risk of businesses making the choice between collecting data themselves and buying it from a public authority. So it becomes almost a competition how to do that. I would suggest that cities and local authorities look at schemes where they deliver data under sort of quality guarantees or some sort of service level, and in exchange they get something back in terms of either a monitoring or analysis. So you do much more of a barter system and a quid pro quo kind of arrangement than flat monetization. What we're doing in the legislation now as well is considering the idea of adding actual provisions on service providers who want to use the data. So, for instance, if a local authority shares a traffic circulation plan in a digitalized format, which says that navigation services should not route their users along a school or along a hospital, if that data is available, then navigation service providers should follow those rules, should follow those circulation plans. So try to find it much more in a collaborative perspective than simply a business model to exploit.
Okay. There's also like another side of the questions that we are discussing, speaking a lot about data, but we touched a little bit with the talk of Edoardo about also privacy and consumer perspective. And Jan Maarten also has mentioned the pains and gains of truck drivers in his presentations, but taking it broader to the level of the end users of these products and services that you are developing. So how much and at which stage do you think that the end users need to be included in the development of data-related product services? So is this something that we need to take in consideration early enough in these processes, or speaking about data is completely another layer of talk? Maybe it's a question for you, Esti, because like you are really working with public authorities on the service, right? Like by developing this type of services, do you develop it with end user, or you think it's not really necessary?
Oh, we don't. As we do this automated review of the road status, we want to get curated data. So we want to make sure that the data is good. So we are, in principle, we are working with the fleets of the maintenance or the fleet of the road operator. So we don't take any personal data. We don't take data from any individual. So it's data from a fleet vehicle. We don't even know who the driver is that day. So we don't want to enter into that private data issue, really. We want to avoid that part.
But that's also more question about the end use of your product, right? So in terms of upscale and higher usability of the service that you are developing, how do you work with the mobility professionals to develop the product which really fits their needs?
Mm-hmm. Maybe I can react on that. Yeah, at the start of this environmental zone use case within Socrates, we sat together with the partners I mentioned, and especially TomTom and B-Mobile said, well, we got a lot of complaints from our customers because for them it's unknown that they are entering an environmental zone. So and they got a fee. So from service providers' perspective, it's very important to have that reliable information, and also and they're going to provide it to their customers. Otherwise, they got complaints and they're gonna switch to another service provider. Mm-hmm. So for them, it's very important to have good information and via the service providers also the road users.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I think in your case, Sergio, correct me if I'm wrong, basically you're really developing the digital twins for the decision makers, right? So you are in the heart of this development process.
Yes, indeed. Well, it has two approaches.
Yeah.
On one side, we would like to get some insight and meaningful feedback from using a digital twin, and this way helping the city developing new policies or upgraded policies. You might have heard about the low emission zone in Madrid, the UBAR, so-called Madrid Central, and the polemics around it, because initially it generated quite a lot of reactions against it because of the restrictions. So this could potentially help us improving the low emission zone. But on the other hand, we would like to get also some meaningful input for the logistic operators themselves, mm-hmm. and bring them to this next stage of these data-driven approaches. Some of these operators are already using them, of course, but some others don't. Mm-hmm. So it has these two approaches. We for this project we have this public and private approach. We would like to get benefit for both sides, mm-hmm. actually.
Okay. Good. And I see also in our chat function, there's more ideas on the question of monetization of public data. So I'll just later invite you to check this. And I think we have room for one last question before our session ends up. And there's one question from public. I'm not sure, to be honest, can this work with potential city geofencing or just using mobile phone GPS? Maybe you can relate to a specific person this question, then we will be able to answer it in the chat box. And then the final question maybe for you, Edoardo. So we have discussed updating Commission this regulation as a possible instrument to achieve a new scope. And what are the other instruments that Commission is planning to implement in order to achieve a common European mobility data space?
Ooh, I could dedicate an entire session to those. So, 1 minute. Okay, let me be very brief then. So we have two main pillars at the moment, which are guiding most of the work we do. So obviously the European Green Deal, which is trying to push down CO2 emissions specifically for transport, making transport more fair, equitable, etc. And the European Strategy for Data, which I mentioned. So under these two pillars, lots of things are being developed. Besides the ITS directive revision and the revision of the delegated regulation, which I presented today, we will also be tackling a revision of the delegated regulation on multimodal traveler information services next year. So trying to really make sure that mobility as a service can start upscaling, can start developing further, thanks to new provisions. We are working on all kinds of things in the realm of alternative fuels, to make sure that legislation on alternative fuels is updated and fit for purpose. And of course, for every mode, there is a specific target in terms of revisions and updating of legislation. Let me also mention the revision of the 10T regulation. So the regulation which sets all the main transport corridors in the EU will be revised also with a perspective to include digitalization and sustainability provisions. So these are sort of the flagships that we're currently developing. There was a presentation during the summer on what is going to be in this first package called Fit for 55, which refers to the 55% emissions reduction by 2030, where all the legislative challenges and propositions have been presented. So you can check that out.
Okay, thank you very much for this very short summary. And I see that we need to conclude our session. So we really see that, yeah, digitalizing infrastructure is really a hot topic nowadays, and it involves a lot of developments in terms of new innovative products and services, and also indeed the legislation. So thank you all for your contributions and for your inspiring presentations, interesting panel discussions. Also, thank you, audience, for the good questions. And yeah, I'm sure you know how to reach the speakers in case if you have more questions for them. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.